like a buttercup. You're a Barbie doll. Show them all what I'm made of. Strut down the hall. Won't stop till I get enough.
Welcome back, everybody. We're going to be taking a deep dive today into this whole Sean Diddy Combs situation. There's a lot going on. We've got excerpts from this Forbes article. Judge orders prosecutors to destroy copies of Diddy's jail cell notes. Here's the latest Sean Combs news. And, we've also pulled in some other reporting to help us out because it feels like every day there's another twist and turn.
It's hard to keep up.
It really is hard to keep up.
Yeah.
So we're going to do our best to figure this all out and see if we can untangle this web and figure out what's really going on.
Yeah. One of the things I think is really captivating about this case is just how quickly it's all unfolding. I mean, just a year ago, Diddy was celebrating all these different business wins, and now he's, facing these serious charges.
Yeah, it's a pretty big fall from grace. And I guess, as you mentioned, this is unfolding so quickly. I mean, the latest thing is this judge's order to destroy these copies of notes that Diddy took while he was in jail, because of this whole attorney-client privilege issue. So what are the implications there?
Well, attorney-client privilege is obviously, incredibly important. It's a cornerstone of our legal system. And it basically means that defendants can communicate openly and honestly with their lawyers without fear of that information being used against them. So if those notes contain legal strategy or, confidential information shared between Diddy and his attorney, then the prosecution having access to those notes could be a major problem.
But wouldn't you think that Diddy's lawyers would have been pretty careful about what they discussed with him in jail? I mean, knowing that it's not exactly the most private place?
Yeah, you would think so. But, jail's not known for its privacy. Even seemingly casual conversations can be overheard or monitored. So the judge clearly felt there was enough there to warrant, the destruction of those copies.
Yeah, and this all comes on the heels of that prosecution filing that accuses Diddy of witness tampering, right? The timing is just really strange.
Yeah, it definitely adds another layer to this whole thing.
So the prosecutors are alleging that Diddy asked family members to reach out to victims and potential witnesses to try to influence their testimony. I mean, do you think it's a coincidence that that accusation came right before the judge's order about the jailhouse notes?
It's hard to say for sure, but the timing is definitely interesting. It's possible that the prosecution's concerns about potential witness tampering played a role in the judge's decision to protect the confidentiality of those communications.
Okay, so let's step back for a second and try to understand the bigger picture here. So Diddy was arrested and then indicted back in September on charges of racketeering, sex trafficking, and transportation for prostitution. I mean, these are really serious charges. For those of us who aren't legal experts, can you break down what racketeering means in this context? It sounds like a mob movie.
Yeah, it does.
Kind of right. So racketeering under the RA-Co Act essentially means engaging in this pattern of criminal activity as part of this organized enterprise. So in Diddy's case, the prosecution is alleging that he was basically the head of this criminal enterprise that used coercion, fraud, and even violence to exploit women for financial gain.
That's really different from the image most of us have of Diddy, the successful musician, entrepreneur, philanthropist.
That's totally different.
These allegations definitely paint a much darker picture.
Absolutely. And what I think is particularly disturbing is that all these charges stem from a series of events that began with that $30 million lawsuit filed by Diddy's ex-girlfriend, Cassandra Ventura, back in November of 2023. So her lawsuit really seemed to open the floodgates for other accusations to surface.
So it sounds like it wasn't just one isolated incident, but actually a pattern of alleged behavior over time. That seems to be what the prosecution is arguing, yeah. And the timeline they've presented is, pretty damning. I mean, by March of this year, federal agents were already raiding Diddy's homes. So, that clearly indicates that there was already an investigation going on. Then in May, CNN reported that investigators were getting close to filing charges. So the indictment and the arrest in September were really just the culmination of this long investigation.
So can you tell us a little more about these allegations? What are the prosecutors claiming that Diddy actually did?
Well, some of the details are, pretty graphic, but essentially the indictment paints this picture of Diddy manipulating and coercing women into participating in what he called these freak-offs. These were basically parties where women were pressured into sexual acts with male commercial sex workers.
I mean, that is really disturbing. And, it goes way beyond what we usually see in these kinds of celebrity scandals.
Mm-hmm.
This alleged use of drugs, threats, and violence to control these women is really horrific.
It's a stark reminder that power and fame can be used to exploit and abuse people. And the prosecution's case seems to hinge on the argument that Diddy created this culture of fear and intimidation that basically prevented these women from coming forward sooner.
And of course, we have to remember that Diddy is innocent until proven guilty. This legal process has to play out. We can't jump to conclusions.
Absolutely.
But, Diddy's lawyer is painting a very different picture. They're basically saying that these lawsuits are nothing more than attempts to extort money from a wealthy and successful black man.
That's a very common defense tactic, especially when you're dealing with these high-profile figures. So they're trying to discredit the accusers. They're saying that they're just opportunists looking for a quick payday.
Okay, and what about Diddy himself? What's he saying?
He's denied all the allegations. He put out a statement, saying that he has confidence in the judicial process, and he maintains his innocence. He believes that truth and justice will prevail. His lawyer, Mark Agnifilo, actually went so far as to express disappointment in the U.S. Attorney's Office for pursuing what he considers to be this unjust prosecution.
So it sounds like Diddy and his legal team are prepared for a fight. They've already made a couple of attempts to get him released on bail. They've cited the conditions at the Metropolitan Detention Center in Brooklyn as being horrific. It's interesting that he's reportedly sharing a unit with Sam Bankman-Fried. Talk about being in the wrong place at the wrong time, right?
Yeah, it's kind of this strange interception of two very different legal battles, but it definitely highlights the complexities of our justice system.
Diddy's lawyers have also claimed that there's been witness tampering by federal officials, that they've been leaking information to the press to damage his reputation. Do you think that's a plausible argument?
It's possible that information has been leaked. But, proving that it was done intentionally to harm Diddy's case is a whole other matter. It could be a tactic that his defense team is using to try to cast doubt on the investigation itself.
And then you've got this whole social media angle. No. Diddy deleted all of his Instagram posts and then reappeared with a birthday message for his daughter.
Yeah.
It seems like a very calculated PR move.
Yeah, it definitely makes you wonder how much of this is, a genuine attempt to deal with this privately versus, controlling the narrative.
And then there's that leaked surveillance video that allegedly shows Diddy abusing Ventura. I mean, that seems like pretty damning evidence.
Yeah, it's hard for his team to just dismiss everything as a smear campaign with that out there. And then there's also that New York Times piece written by Tice DeClorius, John Legend's manager. She describes this really terrifying situation she experienced at a Diddy party in the late 90s.
So it sounds like we're starting to see this pattern of alleged behavior going back decades. This isn't just about recent events.
It seems that way.
It's potentially, a history of abuse that's only now coming to light.
Yeah, and, it's a reminder that sometimes it just takes one person to come forward to break the silence and encourage others to share their experiences.
It feels like this case is becoming more than just a legal battle. It's almost like a cultural reckoning.
Yeah, it's forcing us to confront some really uncomfortable truths about power dynamics. The culture of silence around abuse and how difficult it can be to hold these powerful figures accountable.
Yeah, this is getting really complicated. There's a lot.
Yeah.
We're going to come back after a quick break and discuss this whole political firestorm surrounding this case.
Sounds good. Yeah, it's interesting how this whole case has gotten tangled up with politics. You had Donald Trump Jr. on his podcast trying to draw these connections, between celebrities who endorsed Kamala Harris and those freak-off parties. He even suggested that there might be some kind of, blackmail scheme going on.
All right, and then there was Elon Musk on Joe Rogan. He was questioning J-Lo's credibility because she had dated Diddy. It seems like everyone's got an opinion, and it's all tied up in their politics.
Yeah, it's a good example of how, a legal case can get kind of manipulated and distorted to fit a certain agenda.
Yeah.
Especially, in today's political climate, it's so polarized.
Right. So do you think this kind of, political grandstanding actually has an impact on the case itself? Or is it just kind of noise around the actual legal proceedings?
It's hard to say for sure, but, it definitely doesn't help. I mean, when a case gets this politicized, it's harder to make sure that, the legal process is actually fair and impartial. Public opinion can be swayed. Potential jurors might come in with, these preconceived notions.
Right. It just muddies the waters.
Exactly.
I think it's a good reminder that, we need to be really careful about the information we consume, especially when it comes to these kinds of stories. We see on social media or hear on podcasts might not always give us the full picture.
Yeah, for sure. We have to be careful about jumping to conclusions or accepting these claims without, real evidence.
Okay, so let's shift gears a little bit and talk about Diddy and his legal strategy.
Yeah.
So his lawyers have been really aggressive in their attempts to get him released on bail. They've even appealed the judge's previous denials.
Yeah, they're really pulling out all the stops.
Yeah, they've offered like a $50 million bond, house arrest, GPS monitoring, even, strict limits on visitors.
They're making a strong case. They're saying that he's not a flight risk, that he's got deep ties to the community,
Yeah.
and that, the conditions at the NDC are just inhumane.
Right, and they're also highlighting his willingness to comply with any conditions the court sets to make sure that he shows up for trial. So what do you think? What are the chances that the judge grants bail this time around?
It's tough to say. The judge has already denied bail twice, and he's expressed concerns about Diddy, using his wealth and influence to interfere with the investigation or intimidate witnesses. But I think his legal team is presenting a much more, comprehensive case this time.
Do you think that'll be enough?
I think it really comes down to whether the judge believes that Diddy poses a legitimate threat to the case if he's released. It's a tough decision. You have to balance the risks of flight, witness tampering, or obstruction of justice with Diddy's right to reasonable bail.
Right. It's a tough call.
Yeah.
So while we wait for the judge's decision, let's talk about, what this whole case could mean for Diddy's fortune. I mean, Forbes estimates his current net worth to be around $400 million, which is still, a crazy amount of money. But it's a big drop from what he was worth just a few years ago.
Yeah, this case could really devastate him financially. I mean, the legal fees alone are going to be huge. And then if he's convicted, the fines and penalties could be massive.
Right. And then there's the whole question of, reputational damage. It's hard to put a dollar amount on that.
Yeah.
But it could be even more significant in the long run.
Absolutely. Diddy's brand has always been built on success, charisma, this image of untouchability. And these allegations have, really tarnished that.
Right. It's hard to imagine how he can really come back from this. Even if he's acquitted, the accusations will always be there.
Yeah. And, it makes you wonder if his businesses can survive this kind of negative publicity. Will people still buy his products knowing what they know now?
And what about his legacy? How will this affect the way he's remembered?
Yeah. I mean, will people still focus on his music and his business achievements? Or will they just remember the scandal? It's really a cautionary tale. It shows how fragile fame and fortune can be.
Right. So it seems like his whole world is kind of falling apart. But, he's not giving up. His lawyers are really adamant that he's innocent and that he's a victim of this system that's biased against successful black men.
Yeah, it's a powerful argument, and it resonates with a lot of people. They're basically saying that Diddy is being targeted because of who he is and what he represents, not because of anything he's actually done.
Right. It taps into this, deep distrust of the justice system.
Exactly.
It's a really complicated issue.
On one hand, we have to acknowledge that systemic racism exists in our legal system, but we also can't let that be used as an excuse to protect people who have actually committed crimes.
Right. It's about finding that balance, making sure that everyone is treated fairly under the law, but also making sure that powerful figures are held accountable.
So this case has so many layers, it's hard to know where to go from here. What are some of the key things we should be watching for as this unfolds?
Well, the most immediate thing is the judge's ruling on the bail appeal. If he's released, it could really change things. He would be able to be more involved in his defense, and he could potentially influence, how the story is being told.
Right, and if he's denied bail, it'll be a big setback for his legal team. And it means he stays in, that really difficult environment while he's waiting for trial.
What else should we be paying attention to?
Any new developments in the investigation? Are there more witnesses coming forward? Is there any new evidence?
And of course, we have to watch Diddy's legal strategy. Are they going to keep trying to discredit the accusers? Or will they focus on challenging the evidence? Maybe they'll try to negotiate a plea deal to avoid a trial.
It's a high-stakes game, and every move they make is going to be under a microscope.
Right, and this case could really set some precedents, not just in the entertainment world, but legally, too.
For sure.
It reminds us that the justice system, while it's not perfect, it's designed to hold everyone accountable, no matter how wealthy or famous they are.
Yeah, that's a principle we have to uphold.
So, with all that said, what are your thoughts on how this might end?
It's impossible to say for sure, but I think it's clear that this is a really pivotal moment for Diddy, and this story is going to keep unfolding for a long time.
Yeah, I agree. This whole deep dive has been really eye-opening. I think we've done a good job of breaking down this case and exploring what it all means.
I think so, too.
But, at the end of the day, it's up to each of us to decide what we believe.
Absolutely.
There's no easy answers here.
Yeah.
And that's part of what makes this story so interesting.
Yeah, it really challenges our assumptions about fame, fortune, and justice. It's a story that's not over yet, so, stay informed, keep asking questions, and keep having these important conversations.
Couldn't have said it better myself. Thanks for joining us for this deep dive, and we'll see you next time. All right, so we've talked about a lot. These allegations of racketeering and sex trafficking, the judge's order about those jailhouse notes, Diddy's lawyers trying to get him out on bail, the impact this is all having on his businesses, even how this whole thing is tied up in politics. It's a lot to think about.
It really is. There's so many different angles to this story. What do you think is the most important part so far?
Honestly, I don't know if I can pick just one. I mean, the accusations against Diddy are really disturbing. But I also keep thinking about those jailhouse notes. And what could happen if attorney-client privilege was actually violated? That's a big deal.
Yeah, that could have a huge impact on the whole case. And then there's the question of bail. If he gets out, that could change everything. But if he doesn't, it's going to be tough for him.
Right, and we can't forget about his image and his businesses. This is really hurting his reputation.
Yeah, reputation is everything these days, especially with social media.
So where do you think this is all going? What are the possible outcomes here?
Well, the best case scenario for Diddy is that he's found not guilty. But even then, this is going to follow him around.
What if he is found guilty?
Then it could be really bad. Prison time, big fines, his whole career could be over.
This case is making people think about the entertainment industry in a different way. It's bringing up these conversations about abuse and power.
Yeah, it's forcing us to ask some tough questions, like how do we protect victims? And how do we make sure that powerful people are held accountable?
It makes you wonder how many other stories like this are out there.
It's a conversation we need to be having, not just in Hollywood, but everywhere.
This deep dive has been really interesting.
Yeah, I've learned a lot.
We've tried to break down this complicated case and talk about what it all means. But ultimately, it's up to each of us to decide what we think.
I agree.
There aren't any easy answers. And that's what makes this so fascinating.
It's a case that makes us question everything we thought we knew about fame and fortune and justice, and it's not over yet. So stay informed, keep learning about this, and let's keep talking about these important issues.
Thanks for joining us for this deep dive, everyone. We'll see you next time.
Sound the alarm. I'm coming up. We'll have a ball. I'm sweet like a buttercup. You're Barbie doll. Show them all what I'm made of. Strut down the hall. Won't stop till I get enough.